Hello, everybody.
Hello. We even have
Hi.
boppy music to come into too.
I know. So we feel so fancy, so refined.
Mhm.
Well, I guess welcome everybody. I'll also play the role of moderator here, but welcome everybody to another Smarter Consulting webinar. And today we're talking about navigating the Microsoft 365 maturity model and how you can leverage that, what you can do with that, why you need to be reviewing that, and building out your overall governance strategy. So about Smarter Consulting, Sharon, would you like to introduce your company?
Absolutely. So, Smarter Consulting, we're a Microsoft partner, and we have been around for a little over 7 years. So, we're starting to be able to do things for ourselves a little bit. And we help people with primarily modern work initiatives. And so, we really like to find out what problems we can help people solve in the technology space and use tech better, use tech smarter, and work smarter, not harder.
A lot of technology that's out there too. This is something that's key because especially in the governance space, you have a number of these partners that are on here that have governance solutions in place. And so we get asked all the time, we have conversations all the time of like, what do you recommend? And the standard answer for that question is,
It depends.
it depends. we should really get that so it's coordinated. We all
We
four
need
say it at the same time.
t-shirts.
I know. Have a logo or something or other. But we are familiar with and are partners with the leading solutions in this space. And so different tools are best suited for different scenarios. And so we're happy to talk to you about that and share our experience there. And then as far as the services and capabilities, Sharon, maybe you do more of a deep dive.
Yeah. So, when I first started this, I was consulting primarily on SharePoint and some practice management and a little governance and a little migration. And then we got some solutions thrown in there. And as we've grown and taken on more opportunities and taken on more consultants and partnered with more people, we've been able to deliver a lot of different things. And so the areas that I think we really primarily excel at are strategy-based, productivity-based, modern work-based. And so anything in that space we can do, we can help you take things from not in the cloud to in the cloud. We can help you make things more efficient. So this is absolutely not a comprehensive list at all. And then most importantly, we can also train you on how to use the things you already have.
Which is a key. And quick introductions. So when we will do this, Sharon, Galen, Antares, and then I can wrap it up.
So, Sharon Weaver, I'm the CEO and founder of Smarter Consulting. I have a lot of things by my name, and basically what that means is I spend a lot of my spare time working with Microsoft, providing feedback to Microsoft, and learning about all the new cool stuff that's out there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Galen Keene. I've been in IT for a couple decades now, working in SharePoint for almost a couple of decades. My first introduction to SharePoint was as part of a project management server. And what do you know? Been working in project management as well for over a decade. I've led teams globally, working through information management and collaboration practices. Delivered a lot of solutions for companies large and small throughout many industries. And happy to talk about how we do that successfully here at Smarter.
Hi, my name is Antares Leask, and I love this slide because it's like one of these things is not like the other. I am an academic moving into tech, and we have a really good friend who every time she talks about IT, she says that you have to be able to talk about IT in a way that even Brenda from accounting gets it. So if you are also new to some of these concepts, I am serving as your Brenda from accounting today, and we will all get through it together.
There's always such a need for that. And so I'm Christian Buckley. So I've been in tech for 33, almost 34 years. I started early in my career. My first roles was a technical writer and business analyst. And so my job was to do exactly what you just described, but without the educational background. I started out in the space And Galen, I actually didn't know that about you. Like same thing. I was doing a project server deployment in 2005 on back in the old WSS days of SharePoint.
Yeah.
And I was at Microsoft for the launch of what is now Office 365, and then left and went to work for ISVs and went through multiple acquisitions, served as a CMO. So been in the space for a long time, and the last 13 years of which have been as an MVP, focusing on SharePoint teams collaboration. But if you go and look up my name, Christian Buckley, and governance, even if you just say Microsoft and governance, my name is going to be all over the place. So I've been writing about, passionate about governance. Started working in governance space back in the mid 90s. So a long time in IT governance, corporate governance as well, got involved as a consultant, but really over the last 15 years, focused in depth on Microsoft Office 365 and Microsoft 365 governance. So that is the topic du jour for the day. And what is governance? So we've got a couple like high level slides here, and then we're going to have like a panel discussion. We're actually going to go in and look at some things out on the live site as well. But when you think of governance, maybe ask this to the panel, like, is there an image that comes to mind? Maybe a meme that you've seen or something when you think about Microsoft 365 governance?
So my first experience was the first training I went to on Microsoft Learn. The first one I chose off the list was called How to Prepare Your Organization for Copilot. And I'm like, great, we're going to hold hands. This is right up my alley.
Yeah, that's right.
Chat with people. And then it was all governance and it was all security, and it was fascinating. And it was so interesting to look at how everything connects and all the things people might not be thinking about when it comes to governance.
There's a couple of images that come to my mind just through conversations throughout the years. I think oftentimes people think of it as like guardrails. Now I feel like I'm being nice and saying guardrails.
Yeah.
But there's another analogy that I think a lot of people use where it's like the brakes on a race car. You can't go fast with your race car unless you can slow down and stop, right? So governance, I think, what's really important is that people understand governance allows you to move quicker, more safely to achieve your goals.
I think the old school concept of governance, because if you go look up my name and governance, the same as Christian, I had a presentation I did a bazillion times that was talking about governance around SharePoint. And I think the old thought to governance is that it's like some gigantic document that somebody wrote that lists every single rule about every single thing that anybody can or can't do. And, one of the things that I really like to dispel is that idea that it does not need to be one gigantic document that's just been sitting there forever that nobody's ever looked at. It's organic and it's living and it's breathing, and it depends on, what day it is and who's participating as to what that governance might look like for you at any given time.
Yeah, I love that I used to poke fun at that model. It's like, well, we have a governance document and there's a checklist of everything we need to get done. So when you're at the end of the checklist, we're now governed. It's like, we're done.
Yeah.
Like, go home. It's like, no.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing activity. But it's the other thing is funny too, just a thought here too, as I talk to organizations, a lot of them look at it and they say, it's like, well, we just need to get going and people just use common sense and we can go in and do this. And maybe that works when you've got 10, 15 people in the company. But I said, maybe I left room there. But as you grow, it's impossible. You start seeing impacts to people being able to find the right content, the organization around that. If you are, say if you're sued or you need to go find critical information and have to go in and dig through and find all of that, if it's not, your information architecture is not there, if you don't have the right access and to get to the data that you need to get your job done. I mean, all those things can, again, inhibit an organization from moving quickly. So having structure, it's not about bureaucracy. It's about having structure so that you can move fast.
And structure that everyone understands, even Brenda from accounting.
Yes.
Right. And you might not be able to find something in some cases, and you might find things you shouldn't find in others, right? And so I think Antares, that use case where you started with Copilot, that's very prevalent now, right? Where we find that some organizations now through a Copilot might be exposing data they didn't know they were exposing to all of their employees.
That's a great question. That if we were doing a live session with an audience, where at this point I would ask people to raise their hands if they really only started thinking about governance when they went and modified it. Maybe they built a custom search solution, or they're looking at moving forward with Copilot, where suddenly they realized I'm seeing things, I have access to things which I thought were secure, but I shouldn't be seeing. Like, you can't do security through obscurity. Like, you need to have that model in place. And it is
Copilot will definitely remove security by obscurity in a heartbeat.
Yeah. So this one about having a governance strategy, and this is always an interesting question. This is what I've seen when doing surveys on the topic, and you get a tentative answer. Like, the majority, the biggest response is, I'm pretty sure we do. Like, I've not seen it, but I think my organization has something, or I have seen it 5 years ago, but we had something at some point, and it was, again, a document that was in a document library somewhere on the intranet, not an active, living, breathing thing. When people have an active, proactive governance, motion happening in their organization, they're usually aware of that. Like, it has a name, they know the people that are, or they're participating in it.
And a champion. It has a champion, right? Somebody who advocates for it and has the megaphone to ensure that people are aware of the team responsible for it.
Yep. Now, there's a lot of things, and this isn't like a prescription, what we do around there. This is a very high level. It's actually taken from an article out on our blog, if you would like to go and read more into each one of these things. But we were trying to, simplify the list down to, and we landed on 12, but kind of some of the main categories here of developing your actual strategy. And so different things could be more important. You may have a higher risk profile. You might be in an industry or work in a solution or with customers that have more restrictions, more laws and rules. If you're in finance, if you're in securities, if you work in the government sector, the public sector, there may be more activities around some of these things, but all of these different components should go into your overall strategy. So without reading through each one, anything stand out that you want to make a point around?
Well, and I'm going to tie the last slide to this one. And, we're talking about what governance is and what it isn't. And one of the things, when you look at this, what it is it's an agreement, right? It's agreement of what we're going to allow, what we're not going to allow, what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. So what settings are we going to have? And I think, so if you look at each of these things, these all are managed by different groups and different people in different roles to make sure that the strategy is all taken care of. But ultimately, it's an agreement across the organization of what your tolerance is going to be for things.
And one of the benefits of having a strategy, so have it defined and it's ongoing, and then be reviewing that on a regular basis. I've worked at organizations where I've started up an overall, IT governance and that motion where it may have started out with meetings every other week, and maybe it moved to monthly. Whether it's weekly, monthly, quarterly, I would say I would land on more of the monthly. Things change too quickly for a quarterly, but where you're reviewing new requests in and impacts of those, and having the right stakeholders from around the organization. Like, I would find all the time where I thought we talked to all of the key stakeholders, and then somebody in the sales organization would be like, oh, actually, here's how that's impacting us. We had no idea, if not sitting in there. We had canvassed the various stakeholders and groups. We thought there wasn't an impact, and then somebody brought that to the table. It was on the agenda. It was part of our monthly meeting. And so they had that opportunity. They knew that they needed to have a representative there, have a voice in these discussions, and think seriously around how does this upcoming proposed change really impact us and our needs. And that just turned out to be an invaluable session as part of the rhythm of the business for that organization. So I don't know, any other standouts, anything else you want to call out?
Yeah, I'd like to call out that there's a lot of dovetails with other parts of what we're going to discuss today. For example, training and support. Support where maybe IT is bringing in, here's some of the upcoming new capabilities some services are going to provide. How does that impact your governance strategy or your ability to enforce governance guidelines, or and how does that impact or influence processes within an organization? If you're having that monthly meeting, you kind of bring those to the table and understand the impact, so that you can then provide training on maybe updates to your plan and your strategy based off of just the inputs and outputs of updates to services and capabilities that maybe Microsoft is providing within the M365 platform. So there's a lot of dovetails into what we're going to discuss coming out of this slide. This is the foundation, I think, for all of it.
And I think on that point, and we'll make it at the end after we'll review the maturity model, but it's the last one there, regularly reviewing and updating the framework, because your business changes, the technology certainly always changes, and the needs of your users, of your partners, or your customers are constantly evolving and changing. So it's not just like the governance motion of discussing all the issues and the content, but separate from that should have a discussion where you're doing a review of our process, our methods, the tools. What are we finding that's successful or not? Like we were doing, are you doing like, employee satisfaction surveys and pulse surveys? Are you doing it on a regular clip? Is it too much? What kind of responses? What areas? Looking at analytics of the system, like people are not picking up and using these tools, and adoption is going each way. And how does that affect, the overall framework that we've rolled out in the company? It's just healthy to look at that on a regular basis and not wait until something goes wrong.
Right.
Make little adjustments throughout.
And the risk of not doing number 12 leads to having laws that make it illegal to take baths.
Yeah.
Keep up with the times, right?
Yeah.
Make sure that you're staying on top of things, stay current, know what you need, make sure your organization is continuing, to meet its own needs, because otherwise you will end up with really weird things that hang around forever.
Yeah. There's got to be some law somewhere. It's like you cannot get married before noon on Thursdays or something. Like there was a reason in the 1840s for that, I guess, but yeah, no longer applies. So here's another big question of where to begin. And so I heard this last week. I was at the Power Platform Conference. Galen, you were also there, but we didn't see each other. So it was.
I think we only saw each other once.
Oh, that's right. We did see each other once. That's right. But it was, with 8,000 people, and I was in the expo hall, and
a lot going on at that conference. A lot of good content, a lot of great vendors out on the expo hall.
But I actually heard this question. So I was up in the community area at the conference and was having a quick conversation. And somebody it was more of a statement of being flustered by, like, I don't even know where we need to begin. Like, we're doing little things, but it feels like Band-Aids. And I said, well, do you have an overall governance framework? Like, how are you approaching all of this? Like, no. I said, have you gone and done like an assessment, a self-assessment, or had help to go and look at what is the scope of all the things? Like, you might be doing some things right, but if you don't have the framework, you're likely doing a lot of things inefficiently or wrong, that could cause problems later. And so, like, where do you begin?
I think it seems overwhelming sometimes for a lot of people, like you mentioned, because you're not entirely sure where to start. And I always, whenever we talk about maturity, whenever we talk about trying to figure out how to get from here to there, you have to know where you're at. Like you mentioned, there's workshops, there's self-evaluation tools, there's bringing, consulting companies in to help you to understand that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's really understanding, what are you doing now? What are you doing? And then what do you want to get to, so that you can figure the in-between out. But I mean, I think that it's as simple as that.
Yeah. And I think that's where it's a great segue right into the maturity model, because it is a way that you can understand how to get started, where you need to start. And part of that is to understand, as you just pointed out, that current state. What is the state of our organization? This is another thing where you do a survey, and I've done this research and I've done these surveys, I've run them, is people tend to be biased towards the positive. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we're doing that. And you go in and you actually look at it and like, no. And like, if you cannot, I'd almost look at it from a legal standpoint. If you cannot prove and show evidence that this is the case, like, then you can't count on it being the case. Like, go find the evidence that we do this. Where's the documentation? Where's the team? Where's the meeting around that? But it's, the purpose of the model fundamentally is to help organizations understand, where am I today? And then have a clear picture of how do I improve on these things? We know where we are today, and we know it's insufficient for the growth of the company. And then you have now a model for how you move to the next step. Like, what does that actually entail?
And I love that. I love the clear steps to, okay, you're here. If you want to get here, I like that everything's laid out for you in all the different competencies that you're looking at in your business. They're not just throwing you out to dry and saying, okay, you're way down here. The fact that like there's actual guidance that comes with it.
Yep.
And I think it's important to realize also that in this model, you can have this discussion at the Power Platform Conference, talking about biz apps and data. And you can have it at the M365 conference, talking about Teams and SharePoint. I mean, it's applicable to everything.
Yep. Well, let's jump right in. So I've got the site open for folks. If you've not gone and browsed through this, this may be hard to read some of that, just it's out on the live website. But again, you just go search for the Microsoft 365 or M365 maturity model. You'll find this. And this is a community-led initiative. This was started back as the SharePoint maturity model about, 14 years ago, I think, 14, 15 years ago. Sadie Van Buren kicked things off, but it moved over. And Microsoft has done a really great job over the last, I'd say 5 or 6 years, especially, and improving a lot of the documentation and getting out in front of it. And a lot of things like this that are community led rather than Microsoft. Like so Sharon, you're actually part of the committee that drives all of this, and talk about the level of involvement of community versus Microsoft.
So Microsoft essentially provides the place for the content to live, and they provide some resources to help make sure that it gets published, and provide a little bit of assistance with that publishing process. But the content itself and all the updates and all the information is, I would say, probably 90% community led and community provided. And so there's a group of people who have consistently gotten together since that time. And over the years, it's changed. There's different people who have been part of the core group. And then there are quite a few number of community participants that meet on a regular basis to then provide feedback to that. So there's a small group of us that meets fairly regularly, once a week, actually, for about an hour, just to kind of, consistently update this. And then once a month, there's an outgoing community call where the community is invited to then provide feedback and provide information. And all of that information is then put into documentation and then posted into GitHub and published out through this entire model. And so it's a fantastic thing to have been a part of for the last little bit. I've really enjoyed it. I'll continue to be part of it probably for quite a while, just because I believe so much in what they're doing and what this is offering in terms of value out to the community.
Yep. And what I love about this too, I mean, it's great resource to navigate through, but you have other documentation and kind of learning paths. So one, management of content competency, the employee experience competency. So you've got other like workshop materials and each of the different competency areas. I mean, that's when you get in and look at the actual complexity of it. It really is. It's not just the tools, the technology aspect of it, but it's also the people aspect, the organization around that. And so that is, so here's the things that are published. I can't wait for this, the data and analytics competency. I don't know where that is. Sharon, any insights into when that's going to go live?
It might be a little while. I know they've started on it. And I know we're working with some people behind the scenes to make sure that what does go out, even though it's community led, we really still want to make sure that it's thought leaders in the industry, just to make sure that that content is accurate and helpful. And so it's in process.
So, and maybe this is to the group here, because one of the difficulties is like, well, if you go in and understand in the maturity model, the whole idea of, level 100 initial through 200 is managed, 300 defined, 400 predictable, and then 500 really optimizing. The goal is not always to be at level 500. It may be that, hey, we want to make sure that we're mature. We want to have things defined and predictable. So like 300 to 400 might be the right maturity level for your organization. And you always know how can we improve? How can we continue to optimize, be more efficient, and get more out of the technology that we're investing so much in? But it has that basic model. So the question is around the competencies. Like this part can be, again, a place to be overwhelmed. So I go click into like just one around collaboration, for example. So you go in and then it starts providing, what does it mean as 100 level around each of the different areas? It starts to give you that detail. Again, as you're reading through, you might be doing, if you're doing all of these things at the 200 level and maybe only some of the things at 300, then you're a level 200 aspiring to be the level 300. But going back to all the different competencies, where should people start? In which competencies should they go and try and tackle all of them as part of their assessment? Like, what advice do you give there?
I definitely, there's actually a link that takes you to the workshop information that gives you a workbook that you can go in and take a look at, the different areas. I personally would say, what problem are you trying to solve? I never like any, but to do anything just for the sake to solve, and where do you want to go after that?
Yeah, so you can see the workshop over here on the right, but that's a great way to go in and prepare. Any other thoughts, Galen and Terry's, about, is there an area, like a place to go and start and focus in on? I mean, obviously, go and run the workshop. That will help highlight areas of need.
Right. I think once you're evaluating, the value that you're looking, or that your organization is looking for, or that you're looking to provide for your organization, that's a perfect place to start. And then once you proceed through these workshops and you evaluate the different levels, I would say that there's a lot of integration between the different competencies. So as you increase the maturity level in one competency, you may be increasing the maturity level in other competencies. So I think that's where Sharon says, hey, this can be a little bit overwhelming, because as you dive into one, you may be diving into many. But really start with where the value add for your organization is, and really focus in there, and just kind of branch out into the other competencies that'll help you achieve your goal with the primary value proposition you're looking or your company's looking for.
I've mostly stayed in the business practice area because of that structure that we talked about earlier, and making sure that everyone is aligned in that way before touching everything else. That's right.
I think you're right, because the business process, the people and communities, the employee experience, those things which are the people focused side of that things. I mean, all these things are going to move things forward and improve aspects of your business. But I think the other benefit here is if you are in a larger organization where maybe different people own different aspects of this, they can go and drive, and you can coordinate together, but that they can go and look at, like a traditional IT that's looking at, or maybe security that's looking at both infrastructure and the governance, risk, and compliance areas. Large organizations will have, people whose roles it is to look at that and maintain those things. They're responsible for those, especially if you have industry or regional requirements that kind of drive what the business is doing. I actually played that role, and I think Sharon and Galen, you've both done the same thing, where I actually went in and worked with clients around compliance assessments, around financial systems and other processes, and companies that were being fined, and how do we get this back on track? How do we become compliant? And so this can really help define all of those pieces to ensure that as you're collaborating as a company, that you're not accidentally breaking a lot of those rules, those guardrails.
And I think that's a good point too, is that, so we look at this in terms of there are different competencies, and the reason that this group has broken into competencies is really because at a high level, we're looking at how mature is your organization overall, right? And a more mature organization is going to spend more time, more investment, more energy into breaking those up and working on them more specifically. And so by breaking them into the competencies, by breaking them down into smaller pieces, it's easier for you to then identify what piece of the pie or what problem am I specifically focused on at this time. So to your point, if it's a security issue, maybe I want to beeline straight to a specific security area. If it's an infrastructure issue, I'm going to go straight there. If it's a communication or a training issue, maybe I want to start in that area. And so it's not that there's a right place or a wrong place. I think mature organizations recognize that overall, it just breaks down into little, into common elements that can be managed easier if you know what you're starting with.
Well, that's why understanding that current state is so critical. And I would always say this, and having been in IT for 33 years, is a common scenario. I've seen the memes out there now, and I'm like, it's funny because it's true that one of the primary problems with like engineering, with software engineers, is they often will go in and start thinking solutions before they fully understand the problem that they're trying to solve, the full scope of that. That's what you're trying to do. You can't plan your strategy forward if you're not clear on where you are today. And so that is one of the primary functions of doing a self-assessment, having a third-party assessment, but leveraging tools like the maturity model to get a better understanding of here's the reality of where we are. In fact, I love it, say that if you go in and do a self-assessment and then hire a consultant to come in and do an assessment, is do a little gap analysis, like why, like hands down, like almost every time there will be differences between the responses of that. And so again, my bias towards my company, like, I'm pretty sure we're doing this. So yes, we're at level 300 here. No, you're actually at barely 200 level on this.
Well, there's also these little pieces that we do all the time organically, that we do processes every day. But the question is, are we writing them down? Are we tracking them? Are we organizing them? Are we using metrics? Are we auditing them? Are we, how do we know that they're repeatable? So it's not that people don't have processes. A lot of times they just don't understand what those processes are because they're not formalized. And I liken this to, I kind of, pun intended, what's your current state? If you're trying to travel, and in the United States, we go from state to state all the time. If you're trying to travel and you don't know where you are, how in the world would you know what flight to book or, what to do if you don't, maybe I know where I'm going, but I don't know where I'm starting. And so I think there's an important understanding of where are you starting so that you know when you're going there, how to plan that, properly.
And that ties into what you were saying about process, because there may be a process, but each individual has their own process. Like I have my road I take to go over there, and you might have a different road. So just making sure that everything's aligned.
And figuring out now your roadmap, like what do we go and do? Again, if you have that clear picture of here's where we are, and as best you can, you against the competencies, again, as best you can, and there's resources out there to help, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But then you can start prioritizing each of those things. And so then you can say, like, look, we have a major, governance, risk, compliance issues here that we need to go solve first, highest priority. We have infrastructure issues. This is a secondary priority. And then we need to fix some of the things that are the people and the overall collaboration issues around that. But again, there's no right or wrong answer to any of that. And again, you might be at level 100 and your goal is really to get to 200, but beyond that, like there's other things that you need to do and prioritize, and time, you need time to go beyond that and automate more things. That's fine. But at least you have a plan for it, and you better understand, what are the necessary steps to get there.
Yeah, I think there's a key element to this that I like to discuss with clients. It's just enough. Let's do just enough of all of this to achieve your goals. Because as we mature through the model, like I said, you're going to dovetail into other competencies, and we're going to do just enough in each of those competencies to achieve your goal, to deliver the value. And that's, how you show the progress and how you get justification for the investment to make all of this happen, right? And I think if you kind of stay aligned with that and you're clear about what your goals are, you do just enough, you'll see that you mature across the board.
So that's always that question of like, where do I get started? Maturity model is a great place to help you better understand where do I start, and then your plan depends then on those priorities and those goals. And then you can also, if you have top level down, your executive team is saying we need to do this, and you might say, look, you can even go back and show them, like, here's where we are today. You have this goal in 6 months that we're going to be fully automated on this. And here's the reality of what it takes to progress through to get to that thing. And that might take longer than 6 months. So 6 months in online world, I mean, that's just, that's worlds away.
But I was going to say, that's forever, Christian.
I know that feels like it's half of forever. Yes. But yeah, I mean, so you can have those conversations when you better understand where you are today and the steps along the way. And so that really is like the next piece of that is what is that action plan? The maturity model can help with that as well. If you understand where you are and you understand where you want to go, there's guidance within each of those competencies that will help you, like what you need to do to achieve that next level. That goes into your action plan. You then need to go apply that to your organization and the culture of your organization to know how fast they can move and make the necessary changes and adopt new processes and new technology to move you to that place. But that's what goes into that action plan.
In fact, it's not fully, every single scenario is not out on the site, but I can honestly tell you that we talk extensively about this, and there are a ton of good examples that you can say at this level, these are actions we're taking. These are things we're doing. These are things to make me understand not just what is level 100, level 200, level 300, right? Okay, those are words. But if I look at somebody in this competency in a level 100 organization is doing these things, and I want to be doing what's in level 200, or I want to be doing what's level in 300, that helps me to understand how to create the action plan, because I can say, these are the things and the actions I want to be doing in my organization versus the things I really actually am doing in my organization. And so now I can see this visible, roadmap to get from here to there to taking on the actions I want to be doing inside my organization.
Yeah, so part of this, and we shared this as part of this series. This is for those that are new to this. This is our second in our series, and so we've got a couple other episodes coming up. I think 2 more this year. Next month, we're going to be talking specifically about co-pilot readiness and what that actually means, because it all applies. It's a governance discussion, but is again creating that baseline, that you've got that action plan. You know where you are. You have to get that baseline of where we are, and then you start to put together, hey, here's what this roadmap, what we think it looks like against those goals. So as far as next steps, like we always talk about this, like you need to do a self-assessment. You may have done one a year ago. It's time for a new self-assessment to go in, and again, you can do it yourself. We've had how to conduct a self-assessment was part of that was our workshop, or our session last month. And so that recording is available out through our website. You can leverage the tools here. We provide guidance in that. And so you can find some guidance at a higher level on our blog as well. But I would go check out the recording from last month's episode. And then this is a big one. All 3 of these are big, but creating or updating a governance framework, having something in place. There are countless articles, blog posts, videos out there on creating a governance framework. There are methodologies around that. And what do we always say about a methodology?
Have one.
Have one. Doesn't matter which one, just have one that is going to get you thinking about areas that are out of your daily work, your habits and patterns, and making sure that it is a holistic, a comprehensive framework that picks up all these different areas. So that's something that, again, there are tools that are out there to try and do it yourself, and there is help that you can get. And then, as we've talked about, creating an actual action plan that outlines based on those priorities. So we shared the same summary last time as we will in the next 2, because it's part of the series. But governance is something that is not just an add-on later. It should be central to your organizational collaboration activities. And when you have things clearly defined, you have those guardrails up, people are able to do more. They're able to innovate more, and you will get more out of those tools and your people because of those guardrails. It makes search work better. It makes collaboration better. It means that people aren't going out because they're frustrated by the overly policed lockdown environment of an organization that's not doing proper governance. They just lock everything down. And so how do people react when things are locked down? They go around it. And so then they start using unsupported third-party collaboration sites, content hosting sites. They're sending massive files via email that then you have no control over that data, who views it, where it is, what's happening with it. So you need to have that structure and just make governance part of your corporate culture. Any other final thoughts on that?
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, I think that governance is like the brakes on a race car. It's what allows you to safely move quickly to achieve your goals. Like the graphic on the slide of the rocket ship. You can't have a rocket ship of process improvement organization or collaboration organization without good governance, just enough to achieve your goals.
Yeah. I look at that picture and I think, lighting off and sending off a rocket is easy compared to that one's actually landing. It's doing the upright landing in place. That's the origin. So much harder. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the big thing, of this, just, what we talked about earlier is no. Like, I think a lot of people don't know where they're at and they don't know what they want. So make sure you know what you want.
Yep.
And I liked what it said a few slides ago about being honest when you're doing that self-assessment and getting different voices in the room. Because if Christian's going to, have his bias toward positive, someone else has to say, wait, but that doesn't work in my department. So, and then maybe even bring someone from outside to.
Just to point out, I'm always the one that is pointing out what's not going to work about the way that we think that we're doing it. So I'm usually that one. It's like, it's like, can we move forward on this, Christian? Are you past this? Like, well, we've not talked about this yet. So, but yeah. So ways that Smarter Consulting can help. So if you've not visited our website yet, we do have 3 kind of, I would say, packaged offerings around governance. One, if you need help with your governance assessment. So this is a fixed cost activity. It's very low cost. It's meant to be something that we can go in, help you very quickly run an assessment and build that current state view and help then from that with your priorities, with your goals, to build a higher level action plan that you can then take and go and do yourself, or working with a partner to go and build a plan and move forward. But it gives you a better sense of what are your capabilities, what are your systems, the people aspects, the process aspects of that, to know where you are today and then more easily move forward. The governance tune-up builds on top of that. The tune-up actually includes the assessment. And then that's where we actually, the consulting services at Smarter Consulting can help you then, if you don't have the personnel to go in and then make the necessary changes and help to automate and build the things that you need using the Microsoft stack. So we can help with that as well. And then likewise, we're actively already doing this, providing Copilot readiness workshops. And we're going to talk about it in the October webinar, more detail around that. But so many organizations that are coming up again at the show last week that are looking at Copilot, are starting to pilot things and making plans, and are realizing very quickly, we need to clean up a lot of things. We need to go to get things more organized so that we don't have, issues with IP getting leaked out there. And even Microsoft they've got some brand new offerings that they just announced as part of the Copilot Wave 2 announcements, which came out on the 16th, that have governance side of that, because they realize that even with their offerings, that they need to have things specifically because there's such a strong concern or realization by customers that it's great what it enables me to do, but it also reveals our weaknesses in our overall governance, risk, and compliance. So we can help in all 3 areas. There's more information out there, and we offer a free a 30-minute consultation. We can talk about your specific requirements, your needs, and how we can help. And again, here's the link to that. You can find out more. You can go to the website at smarter-consulting.com under governance and find that in the services and read through the detail. And down below that, we've got the 3 offerings. If you scroll down, it shows everything else comprehensively, what we are able to help you with across your systems. And with that, I know we got a couple comments that come in. Lance made a comment about the problem with the Delve. I was going to make that comment earlier about Delve did the exact same thing that Copilot, not to the extent Delve did things, but you remember when Delve was released, and for folks that never experience the Delve experience, the response that I would hear most frequently from customers was, Delve is showing me content that I shouldn't have access to. It's like, no, what was happening is that was obscured through, your bad governance was covered up by the architecture, the design. It's a permission issue. You didn't have that content secure the way that you thought it was. Delve now opened that up and made it findable by everybody. And so it a lot of organizations that immediately went and turned off Delve because it was highlighting their weaknesses. And Copilot is doing some of the same things. Microsoft Loop is doing some of the same things. So it's something you have to be very careful with the new technology to make sure you understand, is your system able to support the increased, ease of use of finding content and assets within your environment.
Well, on the education and training side, it's especially important because not only can you see stuff that maybe you didn't have access to before. I actually found that some of my clients had access to it. It was correct. They should have had access to it. They just didn't know they had access to it. So things were popping up that they could see that they're like, wait, where did this come from? And so I think, from an education perspective, it's good for people to understand how do I use this new tool and what will I be seeing? And is it going to be okay? And why is what I'm seeing different than what other people are seeing? And is that all right?
Yeah. And there's another question here. I'll post it from that Lance also asked. You have info on governance with information barriers in place between departments. Yeah, I mean, look, between departments, between geographies, worked with organizations so sometimes you might have a multi-tenancy, like everybody has access to the global company, but maybe through acquisition or for other legal reasons, you have different tenants and you have trust between those environments, but limitations around all those things. And so how governance can be very complex. So in like that situation, you might have corporate governance, but have to maintain really like two different subgroups, governance teams that own each of those separate environments.
The architecture that's underneath the governance or behind the governance. So we think about like how we architect our content, how we architect our permissions, how we architect our data. I talk to a lot of people about information and data architecture, and I think that topic is going to become hot, more important than it's been in a very long time. Because to your point, Lance, the information barrier becomes very obvious when you lay something like Copilot on the top of that if it's not architected properly underneath. I don't know that I have a link for review right now, but definitely we have some knowledge and content around this.
Yeah, and I think those of us that have worked in government spaces, especially in defense, we're used to working in processes that have significant governance requirements, legal and risk compliance requirements that govern how you're going to collaborate with each other and how you're going to move data from one location to the next, one geographical area to the next. So all of those decisions get captured in your governance strategy. They help they influence the maturity in certain competencies. So we can definitely help, establish where you are and chart the course to meet those compliancies. We definitely have the capability to do that.
And to continue the sport so that it can be living and breathing and not just a checklist in someone's file cabinet.
Right. That used to be like a major meme. There was, it's not a checklist. It's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing, living, breathing, activity within an organization. And that's why, again, I mean, it should be baked into the culture of your organization.
Yep.
All right. Well, with that, thank you for the questions. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And of course, I guess one more time, I can add that up here with the link. But reach out to us if you want to find out more. If you want to schedule that free consultation, really encourage you to go and do that. And if there's any other questions, our contact info is out there. We're easy to find. So you can find us out on social or find us through the contact form on the website. And so with that, thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you to
Thanks
the
for
panel.
joining, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, bye.